Every single last one of you, I mean, every single last one of you is a lucky, lucky boy or girl, because today, on this very podcast, we're going to talk about ancient Persian receipts. That's right. That's about to happen. No. Don't turn it off. Why are you being all weird about it? You think, I mean, come on. All right. It's going to be more interesting than it sounds like. Sometimes if you make things sound real hypey and you just yell and bring the energy, then people are like, that boring thing suddenly sounds awesome. You didn't fall for it. Fine. Let me try logic to sell you on why this is going to be interesting. Because every single time that we have any physical artifact that we can hold in our hand from 2,500 years ago that connects us to any other world, other time in history that is now mostly lost, that's a big deal. But when we have artifacts in our hand that tell us little details about the comings and goings of the world that we're reading about in the Bible from 2,500 years ago, I think that gets even interesting-ger. And we have that kind of situation here as we get a little peek into what the economic life was like of the court of King Artaxerxes in Persia, and how, in a practical sense, Artaxerxes was going to have to make moves to grant the request that Nehemiah is making in chapter 2. Was that better? I'm not sure that was better. I don't know. It's going to be good. Here's what we're doing. Nehemiah chapter 2. We got a situation where Nehemiah has received a dreadful message. His ancestral homeland is in disrepair. The people are in disgrace and are in need of rebuilding, and the walls and the gates are in disrepair and they're in need of rebuilding. So he thinks about it for a long time, maybe months even. And then in March of 444 BC, we think, on one fateful day, he goes into the throne room to bring wine to the king, and however he makes it clear that he's not doing very well, it comes through to the emotionally attentive king. He's like, hey man, what's up? I've never seen you sad in my presence before. What's going on? Okay, that's a good start. Nehemiah's like, I'm sad because of this stuff that's going on that I just said a minute ago about disgrace and walls being busted down and everything. And then the king gives him a positive response. He's like, well, what is it that you want? Then Nehemiah gathers himself, breathes, thinks for a minute, prays to God, and then he says, if it pleases the king, and if your servants found favor in the king's sight, then let the king send me to the city in Judah where my fathers are buried so I can rebuild it. Then the king, with the queen sitting beside him, asked me, how long will your journey take, and when will you get back? Okay, so that's a yes. We're no longer in the negotiating thumbs up, thumbs down phase of this conversation. Now we're into the what's it going to take to get this right? What do you need part of the conversation? And Nehemiah picks up on that. In verse 9, he says, in response to that question from the king, how long will your journey take and when will you get back? Nehemiah says, it pleased the king to send me, so I set a time. Okay, great. Verse 7, I also said to him, now we're getting to the fine details of the negotiation. If it pleases the king, may I have letters to the governors of Trans-Euphrates so that they will provide me safe conduct until I arrive in Judah. Interesting, for a lot of reasons. Okay, one, remember what we found in the book of Ezra, Nehemiah's contemporary who went a few years earlier to go and try and rebuild the people and get the sacrificial system working right, and then he ran into societal rot there that he tried to root out, maybe in an advisable way, maybe in a not advisable way. Jury's still out on that. Remember, Ezra made that trip with a crazy amount of money, but he declined an escort from this same very king. Whoa. Okay, well, I wonder if Artaxerxes still has that in his mind. Yeah, I seem to remember another one of you types coming in here and wanting to go to Jerusalem to do things, and I gave the thumbs up on that. I wasn't quite sure what the protocol was with you, Nehemiah, because this other fellow, what was it, Ezra? Yeah, Ezra, he declined a military escort. So Nehemiah starts by addressing that question that might have been lingering for Artaxerxes. Like, do you want people with swords to make sure you get there? Because I'd really like you to get there and back because you're really useful to me. I kind of like having you around. I'd prefer if you didn't die. Also, you're probably going to have a lot of my money. So Nehemiah just pops that tension bubble. And so it's like, yeah, I'd love to have letters to the governors of Trans-Euphrates so that I can be provided with this safe conduct all the way to Judah. Ezra, you'll recall, it looked like his game plan was to say, I am so connected to the grand big narrative of the whole story of what you and I call the Old Testament, the whole story of the Hebrew, Jewish, Israelite people, that I believe that the providence of God is on this. I'm so sure of it that I don't want to betray that confidence by telling the king that I'll accept a military escort. So I'm just going to shrewdly divide it up amongst my guys, and then we will go. And I think I'm right about God wanting this to work out. And then, of course, Ezra gets there with this plan that I'm not sure was advisable. I still don't know what to make of it. So Ezra divides up all this huge mountain of money between all these different guys. They all make the trip, and you'll recall that when they got there to Jerusalem and they all turned out their pockets, every penny was accounted for. That in itself is kind of a miracle. Amazing, right? Well, the plan's going to be different here on this trip. Nehemiah's like, let's just do it the normal way where you give them swords and huge guys and stuff, and where all of the people through whose set traps I will be traveling. I don't know why that sentence was hard for me, but it was. Let's make sure that all of them have clear instructions from you, the king, with the full weight of your authority behind it, saying, make sure this guy gets to where he's going faster. Now, the king would have liked that as well, because it means, the safer trip is a faster trip. You don't want your guy getting waylaid. You want him to get there and get back as quickly as possible so that he can be in a better mood when he serves you wine. That's not the full motivation of Artaxerxes, but yeah, I think you know what I mean. Okay, so let's take stock of the request so far. I'm sad and I would like to feel better. Cool, what's wrong? The stuff is broken in my city. I'd like to go do something about it. Okay, great. How long's the journey going to take? Oh, okay, it's going to take about this long. When do you want to go? Well, this is about when I want to go. Do you want your trip to look like the way Ezra did it, or do you have something else in mind? No, I'd like to do it more in the official kingly representative of the throne way. Okay, great. And now we're on to the next part of this request for the nuts and bolts of how this trip is actually going to work. Verse 8, Nehemiah still talking here. And may I have letters to Asaph, keeper of the king's forest, so he will make me timber to make beams for the gates of the citadel by the temple, and for the city wall, and for the residence I will occupy. Every resource in Persia belongs to the king. Remember, Herodotus spells it out a bunch of different times, most famously in the interaction between the Persian legate and King Leonidas of Sparta. But Herodotus tells us a whole bunch that the Persians had this habit of going to places and being like, you know what would be way cooler than coming in here with a giant cosmopolitan army with people wearing costumes from the rest of the world and killing you slowly with all of their different interesting weapons in interesting ways? What would be way more fun is if you just bottled up a little bit of your water and a little bit of your dirt and you gave it to this Persian representative right here, and he just took it back to the great king of kings and was like, hey, this town bent the knee to you. Here is their earth and water. You are in charge. Their resources are now yours. You are now responsible, O great king, for their care. That's the deal. You guys want to do that? Because that would be way easier than the stabbing. And most people were like, great, we'd love to be Persian. Persia's awesome. Some people, like the Greeks, famously Spartan kicked somebody into a giant pit. I don't know that they actually did exactly that, but they said, no, we're not giving you the gift of earth and water. You don't own us. Well, in Trans-Euphrates, the land beyond the river where Jerusalem is, the great king of kings had on his shelf labeled earth and water I got from people instead of having to kill them who decided to take the easy way that I put here on this shelf. On his shelf, he had one of those jars that's labeled Jerusalem. So all the trees around there, they belong to the king. The water that flows through there, that belongs to the king. The dirt that all the houses are built on, that belongs to the king. So Nehemiah can't just go and show up and be like, all right, we're taking these trees without a receipt. He needs some sort of imperial regal order, the proper paperwork to say this many trees are to be cut down, or supply whatever trees are needed from the king's forest to this man to complete said project. And there ends the throne room exchange between Artaxerxes and Nehemiah, with Queen Damaspia sitting by. And in addition to how this dovetails in with the last such journey and request with Ezra and a whole bunch of other big picture theology things that we'll work through, this is also super fun because of the receipts. Because we can picture, you can hold in your hand. You'd have to break into a place and smash glass, and I'm sure you'd get in a ton of trouble, or maybe you could file some sort of requisition to get to hold it. Probably you're never going to get to hold it. But theoretically, it is possible to physically hold the receipts, the work orders, the marching orders that would set into motion all of this stuff that the king was going to grant, because we've got a mountain of these things that have been discovered dating back to the reign of Cyrus and dating forward long beyond the reign of Artaxerxes. The Persians did a really good job of keeping track of this expansive, bureaucratically governed empire where every single thing that was in the empire was owned by the king and controlled by the king. And overwhelmingly, the king paid people in resources, not coin. And tomorrow, we're going to talk more about specifically what that looked like. I'm going to tell you where you can go and look at these things for yourself. It's not easy. They're not readily available all over the internet. You got to want to find them, but I'm going to show you where to get them so you can go and look at these with your own eyes and consider if you might be looking on one of the receipts from this particular journey of Nehemiah, because you might be. And I think that's super fun. And then we'll work a little bit further forward in the text as well to see how these various officials felt when they got these receipts, when they got these marching orders and work orders from the king. I love it when the Bible story and the extra biblical stuff intersect. It's just super fun to chase that down. And if you happen to be one of the people who listen who does not find that to be as fun as me, then I owe you a big thank you. Thank you for indulging me on this and letting me have super fun with this particular intersection and share my joy over it with you. More on that tomorrow. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. Let's do this again soon.